ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Channel 23, the Faces of Carlsbad, or the Faces of Eddy County, whichever you prefer. And we're sponsored by the wonderful Intrepid Potash Company in Carlsbad. And we couldn't pick a nicer place to be than the Blue House Cafe. I mean, I've just been sampling one of their cappuccinos. It's delicious. And this program brings to you on television people that you might know, people that you've never met before, people that you'd like to know, and you might even give us a call and say, hey, I like that. Who is that person? We'll fill you in. Anyway, our guest today is a very nice gentleman who happens to be Phil Gregory. And Phil, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Bob.
And it seems strange to me because here at the Blue House, it's such a beautiful place, and you got such wonderful help in there. I know a lady, her name is Jenny Gregory. Is she related to you in any way?
She's my wife.
Oh, she's your wife?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Well, you must get some of the best meals ever served in the city.
As long as I wash the dishes.
Oh, you have to wash the dishes?
Right.
Okay, we won't pursue that, Eddie.
All right.
You know, I don't mind washing dishes, though. Do you? It's
No,
better
it's
than
fine.
fixing the food. Anyway, let's go back in the early days of Phil Gregory. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your parents, and we'll go from there.
Well, my roots in Carlsbad go back to 1903 when my great-grandfather came out here from Chicago. He was originally from Buffalo, New York.
Yes.
And he died when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you some perspective, when he was born, Abraham Lincoln was president.
Abraham Lincoln was president?
Yes.
My goodness.
So I just grew up assuming everyone knew and had a connection to the past. But my mother was born here. My grandmother was not born here, but she lived here most of her life up until the 1920s when they moved to Texas. Then my mother moved with the family, and I was born in Fort Worth.
Oh, I see.
But grew up in several West Texas towns and moved to Carlsbad in the 5th grade. To give you an idea of how perceptive my mother was, when we moved here, and I started 5th grade at Roosevelt School, which is no longer there.
Yes, right.
She said, now remember, it's okay to be from Texas, but you don't have to tell everyone.
She said that. Oh, my goodness.
Very wise woman.
But I've met a lot of Texans since I've been out here in the West, and they've all been nice people.
Oh, it was just to give you an idea. She understood that some people from Texas tend to be a bit overbearing with that background.
Well, one of my daughters is married to a Texan.
Well, both of my children are married to Texans and live in Texas, so
Well,
that's not a problem at all.
no, because I couldn't have a better son-in-law.
Right, no, I feel the
I
same
got two
way.
wonderful sons-in-law, and one of them's from Texas.
Right.
But anyway, so you grew up
Grew up
basically
in West Texas.
West Texas.
Towns like Seminole, Snyder, Fort Stockton.
Oh, you did get
And
around.
We got around. My dad was a printer, and he went where the jobs were. And then he got a job here in Carlsbad, so we moved here in when I was in 5th grade, and graduated from high school, and left for 10 years to go to college and seek employment elsewhere.
You went to college where?
New Mexico State.
In Las Cruces?
In Las Cruces, mechanical engineering.
Aha.
And then I did business administration later when we lived in Massachusetts.
Oh, you moved back to Massachusetts.
I also moved around a bit. I had a job. My first job was in Portland, Oregon.
Beautiful
After-
city.
I
Beautiful
loved it.
city.
I really
City of
loved it.
Roses, right?
Yes. And when I graduated from college, I only had 2 requirements. I would not work in Southern California, and I wanted something outside of New Mexico.
Oh.
So I was fortunate. I had job offers from Hawaii to Connecticut and chose Portland, Oregon. And then an opportunity in Massachusetts came along, and we moved back there. And in 1970 came back to Carlsbad for a visit, and we haven't left since.
Well, getting back to these job offers, you mentioned Portland, and you mentioned Hawaii. You weren't attracted to the offer in Hawaii?
That was I was at first, but several of us were traveling from Las Cruces to Cloudcroft to go to the mountains for a picnic. And one of the fellows in the car made the comment, you realize if you go to Hawaii, we could have already driven completely around the island of Oahu.
Is that?
And I thought about that and said, nah, I don't think so. But I have been to Hawaii and visited. My brother was stationed there in the Air Force, so I did enjoy it very much. But
Beautiful, beautiful island.
oh, it is.
Islands, the islands of Hawaii are so beautiful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a nice place to go on a vacation.
Well, that was my opinion.
Yeah.
But my brother's family lived there and enjoyed it completely, so it worked for them.
So you got involved in this mechanical, is that what you call
Mechanical engineering and
engineering.
business, right.
And how many years did you stay in Portland?
Just a year in Portland, and then 4 years in New England.
Let me stop you right there, Phil. New England winters. How did you put up with those?
Actually, we enjoyed it because the trip to Massachusetts was always intended to be temporary. We knew that we weren't going to stay permanently.
Right.
And unlike New Mexico, it's a land of 4 seasons. You have a definite spring, summer, winter, and a fall.
Correct.
Falls are incredibly beautiful. After a while, I think your blood gets thick and you develop a ability to withstand the cold, so it really wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
And it was the driving was a bigger problem than anything else because of the ice and the snow and the sleet.
Well, you mentioned that your body gets used to this particular temperature. You know, I grew up in Ohio, and I remember one winter in particular, we had 16 inches of snow, and I was out there playing in that snow. It didn't even faze me. But now, when it gets chilly down here, as our last winter or so ago, I said, my gosh, I'll be glad when summer's here. And then when summer comes, holy mackerel, I'll be glad when winter comes.
Well,
But as you said, we don't have 4 seasons here,
No,
basically.
that was the one thing I think we did enjoy, but
Yeah.
we did have a lot of snow. To give you an example, the first winter, we did not have really cold weather until Christmas Eve. It snowed 16 inches.
Yeah.
A couple of days later, it snowed 18 inches.
Oh my gosh.
And we did not see the picnic table in the backyard until April.
Is that right? Oh my gosh.
So it was a different experience for someone from New Mexico.
Yeah. So then you moved from Massachusetts back to...
We came back here. I was headed for Tucson to go to work as a salesman. I wanted to get some business experience.
I see.
And ended up staying in Carlsbad, going to work at Union Industrial, and did some work there, and we eventually sold that business. My father-in-law owned it. I went to work for him, and we did some business with a company from out of state, and ended up selling it to them. And I did a couple of other businesses here, and then got a call from a former schoolmate, Quest Daniel. And Quest was in the personnel department at that time Westinghouse.
Right.
And he said, Phil, we've got a 6 weeks job that we think you could do because we need someone that knows computers and knows manufacturing processes. And since I had a shop and knew computers, I thought, sure, I can do this temporary job. That was 26 years ago. And I ended up staying with Westinghouse, getting on permanently, went through all of the changes with the WIP project, and ended up retiring about 2 months ago.
Now, you mentioned you're good on computers.
Well, I consider myself an average computer user, yes.
That's amazing.
Well, it was part of the process. I mean, it was a tool in order to do the job, like an accountant uses a calculator. It's just something that I picked up because I needed to.
I can just see me, though, in a similar situation. I would have ended up just being a janitor. because I'm so stupid when it comes to anything like that. My wife is the genius in the family with computers, and I don't even know how to turn it on.
Well, some of the software I consider myself a power user, others I just get by.
So you worked for Westinghouse how many years?
Well, Westinghouse,
Well, then the WHIP project.
CBS, through the WHIP project, essentially 26 years.
26 years.
Right.
And then you've just recently retired.
Recently retired.
Now, I noticed that you've injured your leg, your knee, and could that have been when you were doing dishes? Jenny got a little irritated with you? And
No, that was, I tore my meniscus and had some arthritic condition, and Dr. Ford did the surgery last week. So it's coming along well.
Very, very good.
It was, the plan was to avoid having to get an artificial knee, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, that has to be very painful.
It was for the first 2 days,
Yeah.
but it does fine, and with a bit of painkiller, it manages fine.
Well, you seem to be doing very well on it, but you still have to use that cane for...
Well, if I use the cane, I don't get as tired,
Yeah,
but it's healing nicely.
good. I wanted to ask you something, Phil, about what do you do in your spare time? What do you enjoy doing in your spare time? And I know that in the past you didn't have much spare time, but what about now?
Well, I don't know how I found time to go to work. That was we've got a number of maintenance projects here at the Blue House that I have started and will continue to work on. Rebuilding the back porch, for example, was one. And in the past, I've always made it a point to have time for family, for children, and I've done some volunteer work. So it was always important to me to take time to try to balance my life.
Yeah. So does Jenny give you many orders during the day, or do you just kind of ignore? Like
Well,
most of us who are married, we nod and say, yes, that's fine, dear, and then we go on and do what we want to do. What predictions do you have for the people who are watching?
Well, I think a good marriage is a team project, and we discuss what needs to be done and what each of us wants to do, and we work together to accomplish those goals.
Yeah. We have a wonderful staff here, too. That helps.
We do have a good staff. One of the things that we rely on is a good staff.
Yeah.
The training is important, and finding people that have initiative, that are also willing to follow procedures. And it's been interesting that the processes and the procedures that we used at a project like WHIP, I've applied many of those principles to this job, and it seems to be paying off.
That's remarkable. You know, I wouldn't have even thought about that.
Well, as an example, there's a procedure to make a pot of air pot coffee. And if you follow the procedure, it always turns out the same way. If you start deviating, something goes wrong. So that's just one example. The same with making most of the coffee drinks, like the cappuccino that you're enjoying.
Excellent.
And so everyone who comes here should get the same cappuccino.
So the quality is the same, top notch all the way through.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's always the goal.
Well, apparently you've done an excellent job on reaching that.
Well,
pinnacle.
I give Jenny the credit for that. I mean, while I was working, she ran this business.
Yeah.
It was her business. And we made a conscious decision to invest in this rather than put money into the stock market or other than my normal retirement. So this was a conscious decision to do this. That came about as a result of a trip that we took in 2001, early in the summer. Went to France and to Germany, and we spent a lot of time in local cafes and the pubs and got a taste of European life. And we came back and we knew that this business was for sale, and she said, let's do it. So I developed a business plan and said, it'll work, let's go for it.
Now, when you were in France and Germany, what cities did you hit that impressed you the most while you were looking for this particular thing that you wanted to?
Well, we spent most of the time in the Cherbourg area, went to the Le Hague, which is a nuclear facility, and we went there specifically to see a package that was used to transport radioactive waste in Europe and spent nuclear fuel. So the objective was to evaluate if that package would be suitable for use at WIP. In fact, it was and has been certified by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It's known as TruPac 3.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
Is
so
right?
that was the purpose of that trip in 2001, was to investigate that package. And then we went to Germany, and
Where in Germany? What do you remember? Any of the cities?
well, it was primarily to the eastern part of Germany, and Dresden was
Dresden.
the destination.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see a city that had been virtually destroyed during the war,
Right.
that is in the process, a continuing process of rebuilding. And at that time, they had successfully made or started the transformation from a communist city or communist part of the world.
Eastern Germany was a
Definitely,
communist country. Yeah.
Definitely was. And the wall had come down, Germany had reunited, and they were in the process of embracing capitalism, and were doing a good job of it. So we enjoyed Dresden, and we enjoyed Cherbourg particularly. Those were the two main places.
Yeah.
But on the way, we had a chance to go to Mannheim and see an exchange student that we had kept while we were, she was in high school.
Yeah.
And so we spent time with her and her family
Oh, that
on
was
that
nice.
trip. So
Yeah.
that was nice. And in fact, that relationship was so strong that I guess it was 2 years ago we received a phone call one Sunday, and it was Elke, our exchange student from many years ago, and she said, "I'm getting married, and I want to get married at the Blue House."
Is that right?
And she and her fiance came to Carlsbad and were married here at the Blue House. And it was her fiance's idea. He said, "You've always talked about Carlsbad, you've talked about the Blue House," because she had been back for a visit, and said, "Let's get married in Carlsbad and go see the United States for our honeymoon." So that's what they did.
That's
So-
got to be an honor for you.
Well, it
Jamie.
was fun.
Oh my gosh.
It was fun, but that's the kind of relationship we've had with our exchange. We've kept several exchange students, and both of our children were exchange students.
You mentioned Dresden. I've been to Dresden, and I know what you're talking about. The city, I've only seen two cities so badly damaged. One was in Tokyo, where I was stationed right at the end of the war, and then in Dresden. It was unbelievable what air power can do to a city.
Virtually destroyed.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
But it's been rebuilt, and
Yeah.
and the people are doing fine. And during our visits in Europe, we had absolutely no animosity in France or Germany. In fact, we're treated very nice everywhere we went.
Yeah, that makes you feel good, doesn't it?
It does, and it was ironic because it was that September that, of course, September 11th was the World Trade Center disaster.
That's right.
And there was absolutely no hint of that in terms of the European attitudes towards Americans that we saw.
Yeah.
So it was ironic to see both the good and the bad all in one summer.
Yeah. Well, when you get your knee back to the way it should be, do you plan any trips in the future just to get away from the usual routine?
Well, obviously, I've got projects that I want to complete, and setting up a wood shop and rebuilding my old truck. But yes, we do plan to travel. There's parts of the United States that neither my wife nor I have seen, and we want to see that. At some point, we'll obviously sell the Blue House to someone who wants to continue this, and travel would be one of the things that we would do. But that's in the future.
Well, you mentioned that you, rather than playing with the stock market, you invested it in here. And I think this is far more important because the stock market ups and down like a roller coaster, so you've done a good job. This one keeps going up, up, up.
Well, I appreciate that.
No, I'm serious. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I saw a lot of my co-workers take a bath during the dot-com bust.
Yes.
And realized that we could have done the same thing, and we decided to put our investment in this, and it seems to have done well.
Well, now we've got to make sure that you get your knee back in shape so
Oh,
you
absolutely.
can take some of these wonderful trips. You know what I mean? And enjoy life too, because we don't want you to work all the time.
Oh, that's never been a problem.
You're one of those guys who love to work, and it was like joyful.
Oh,
journey.
I had a fantastic job
Yeah.
at WIP. I had an opportunity to do a lot of things. Most of my career was spent in the packaging and shipping area.
Oh, that's interesting.
I was, for most of that career, the project engineer for the packaging, or there's the engineer for the packaging group, and was involved in applications to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and worked with the generator sites on trying to solve their problems to make the True Pack so that we could ship whatever it was that they needed to ship.
Safely too, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
the whole point of WIP is
Right.
safe disposal. And now that we are either on the verge or just completed 10,000 shipments, it's something to be proud of. I'm very
10,000 shipments.
10,000 shipments.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
We have traveled enough miles that if you were to put them end to end, hauling radioactive waste to WIP, we could go to the moon and back about 50 times.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
It is. Some of the statistics, when you put them in layman's terms, that
Yeah.
people can understand.
Yeah.
The one that I always thought was interesting, if you took all of the containers of waste that we have successfully removed from the biosphere, replaced them in the underground, a half a mile underground, if you were to take all of those containers and put them one on top of the other, you'd have a stack about 75 miles tall.
Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable.
It's just an incredible safe project, and one that I'm proud to have been a part of.
Well, in the moment that we have left, I wanted to ask you another question. The young lady that lived with you and had her wedding here. Do you
Right.
still keep in touch with does she still keep in touch with you?
Yes, sir. We sure do. She lives in Switzerland now,
Oh, in Switzerland.
and she works for an insurance company. Her husband's in real estate, and we still maintain contact.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's one of the nicest stories I've ever heard.
Well,
I mean,
appreciate that.
That makes you, I mean, coming all the way from Europe because she wanted to be married here. That's fantastic. Well, all I can say is, Phil, thanks for being with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I want you to take good care of that knee.
Well,
all right?
I plan to.
I'm going to check on that knee
Well,
every so
you
often
just-
to make sure you're...
Anytime.
You can't play golf for a while, though.
No. Well, I couldn't play golf before, so it
Oh,
doesn't matter.
okay. All right, on behalf of Channel 23, we want to thank all of you for listening to us today and watching us, and Phil's been a wonderful guest. And all I can say is goodbye and good luck.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, anyway...